Stigmatization around mental health still exists. In the last several years, there's been an uptick in shared treatment experiences, specifically for those who were in treatment as an adolescent over the last 30 years. As a consultant working with young adults only, it's been unsettling to hear about the horrific experiences that some folks have described. As someone trained as a counselor, we were taught to do no harm. I lead with this for each client I work with. While recording this special parent series, over the last year, several parents have suggested I interview their young adults. The special parent series is noted as being just that. It's about the parent perspective only. I'm now branching out to launch the former participant series, extending the opportunity for former participants who feel comfortable talking about their journey, doing so on this podcast. No topic is off limits, and not all stories are positive. This series is meant to be honest, transparent, and real for each individual's experience through the treatment continuum. Please note that this special former participant series is the adult's perspective of their treatment experience during adolescence or as a young adult. This is merely one perspective of a single story, and it's important to know that names have been changed for the protection of the interviewee unless they have requested not to do so. These episodes may include details surrounding suicide, self-harm, substance abuse, including overdose, hospitalizations, psychotic episodes, and other traumatic experiences which include parts of the treatment journey. That includes working with consultants, being escorted by a transport company, wilderness therapy, and a residential treatment program. All that is to say, listener discretion is advised. Welcome to an episode with a former participant in treatment.
It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilly.
Hi, and welcome to the show. Today, my guest, who is a former program participant, is Ciara. Ciara found herself in a position recently to start helping adolescents, young adults, and their families in a way she needed when she was younger. Her work is in coaching and supporting the family to see if they can potentially divert from the path of headed towards a residential treatment or out-of-home placement. Her personal experience through different treatment programs across the U.S. provided insight into what was helpful and what was harmful. She's written several articles and been podcast guests before, talking about her own journey and what she's doing now with the homing instinct. You won't want to miss this interview. Here's Ciara on today's edition of Success is Subjective. All right, Ciara, thanks for being a guest for our former participant special series on the Success is Subjective podcast. Thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Joanna.
I'm excited. So let's just jump in. I mean, I know a little bit of your backstory just because we talked about it briefly when we connected, but I want to hear more. So first of all, where did you grow up and kind of what was going on in your life before it transpired into entering a treatment continuum?
I grew up in San Francisco, California, in the city. So I would say that obviously when someone ends up in treatment, it's not because there's one moment. There might be one moment that sort of alerts the parents that, okay, this is a situation that has become untenable. But I would say that my challenges with functioning in the world began at quite a young age. And when I was younger, they weren't functioning challenges in the sense of going to school or taking care of myself, but just I felt very sensitive from the time I was young. And I think at the root of everything, I just did not know how to be in the world with how sensitive I was, with how sensitive my heart was. And from a very young age, I just felt like something was wrong with me because I would see other people living and connecting and able to bounce back from things in a way that I just couldn't. And my parents got divorced when I was 9, which was very difficult for me. And I was changing schools a lot as well, just from moving back and forth. So I started to feel even more intensely this sense of not belonging anywhere, not feeling like I had a place or could connect with people. And I started self-harming when I was 10. But I think that like at that age, I was just able to mask it really well. But then when I got to high school, it was like all of the social pressure, the academic pressure, the looming existential questions. and this total insecurity in myself, the volume on all of that just got turned way up. And it started with cutting again, but then I was cutting and then I wasn't going to school, and I was having extreme emotional lows that became lower and lower, and fighting with my parents, sneaking around. I made a few suicide attempts. And throughout all of this, my parents were coming with the kind of typical initial interventions like talk therapy, medications, group therapy, an outpatient DBT program. And it just seemed that nothing was helping. So for many years, it was like every time I thought I'd hit rock bottom, the ground would somehow get lower beneath me. And the whole time I just felt so lonely and so insecure, and just didn't feel like I had any people or place or sense of myself in the world, and was always trying to get out of the pain that I was feeling in ways that would inevitably create the need for damage control. So my life was like extremely chaotic, and I was in a lot of emotional distress.
And as you're talking to, all I can think about is like, for somebody who even at a young age is so extra sensitive, right? Overly sensitive in the sensations and the connections, and this like already existential thought of, where do I belong? How come I'm not feeling or doing or thinking similarly to other people that are around me? I can just imagine how intense that must have felt. And as you were saying, like literally things really just like the volume turned up in high school. I was just picturing this, like, you know how sometimes when you like see speakers, you can actually see the actual like airwaves like moving. That's kind of how I'm picturing the experience for you.
Yeah, because I think like adolescence is so difficult because the unconscious is sort of becoming conscious. So the ways that I felt as a kid that I maybe couldn't verbalize, like I don't belong anywhere, I started to actually put that into a sentence as a teen, which made the volume up because it was just feeling more real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So lots of transitions. And like you said, your parents did kind of like, I'm picturing the like spaghetti being thrown at the wall, which is pretty typical to see what sticks, right? Outpatient, talk therapy, DBT, group, medication, you name it. So at what point was it extreme enough where we needed to find something else?
Yeah, no, that totally is a really accurate visual. Like I could feel in my parents and in myself as well. And I sense this a lot of times when I'm speaking to parents now. There's this, it's like they're on a hamster wheel. There's this obsessive search for, okay, what is going to fix this? Is it this type of therapy? Is it that med? Is it this program? And I think like, it almost kind of reinforced that feeling too, like something's wrong with me, because of how intense this need was to like find what was going to fix me. So I would say that, well, I wouldn't say it happened after my second suicide attempt. And at that point, my parents felt we can't keep her safe at home. And so I went to an inpatient hospital program, and I did DBT there. And I think I was there for 7 or 8 weeks. And I came home from that program on a home contract. And I promptly broke every single one of those rules. Maybe a month later, I cut school. I drove my mom's new car without a license and went to go meet, like some people in a neighborhood in San Francisco, and hit a car while I was trying to parallel park. So I knew how to drive. I did not know how to parallel park. And after that, I got sent to Wilderness. So for my mom, I think she sent me to Wilderness because it seemed to be different than what we had been trying, which was maybe perhaps more traditional, clinical intervention. And so she thought that would be something new and an alternative thing that we could try. But for my parents, it was, they sought out treatment when they felt they couldn't keep me safe at home.
Yeah. And that, I would actually say that that's often a common reason why an out of home placement is made, is that it's gotten to that like crossroads where the parents are saying, I can't I literally need a full-time supervision to keep my child safe. And that's something that I, as a parent, am acknowledging that I don't have the capacity for.
Yeah.
So let's also just talk a little bit about your wilderness experience, because again, you're teeing us up. You tried a lot of these outpatient local experiences, and then it was kind of the narrative, which is, why can't I find this simple solution, right? What's wrong with me? That continues to kind of probably grow in momentum. But how was that wilderness experience for you?
I hated wilderness when I first got there. I tried to fake appendicitis so they would send me home. Did not work. I didn't know what side the appendix was on. I was really sick when I first got there, because programs now, I believe, have clean drinking water, but they did not when I was there. So I was really sick when I first got there, and I hated the rules. I hated that I had to wear a sun hat all day. I almost cursed there, sorry. And I was really defiant and angry, which actually was really important for me to express some of that anger. And over time, it ended up being what really, really gave me a new reference point for how I could feel. I think nature is such a powerful setting for recovery, for any sort of inner work. And I mean, it's an ancient practice. People have been doing rites of passage in nature for millennia. And so being in this place where I actually had space from the noise and pressure of life, and I was away from my friends and family and all of the triggers and constant stimulation, I actually had an experience where I could feel into my own energy and my own self. And it was extremely challenging too, but that helped me build as well a body of counter evidence for how I felt about myself, because there was this like learned helplessness kind of at home where I just didn't feel I could do anything. I didn't think I could get out of bed. I didn't think I could finish a book or finish an essay. And it was difficult for me to feel that I could do those things when I had not done them. And even though I wasn't writing a paper in wilderness, being able to make a fire with a bow drill set or just do a really difficult hike helped me feel a sense of my own competence and capability. And that as well was a new reference point of, okay, I actually can do really difficult things. And I actually can feel okay with myself, in this moment where I'm going to sleep in my A-frame shelter and I'm absolutely filthy and I'm very uncomfortable, but I somehow feel a sense of peace. So it helped me get almost like new psychic and visceral imprints of what could be, what was possible for me.
Yeah. And then I don't know if this is an unfortunate thing, but I started to say that, but wilderness has been really like formed as a therapeutic intervention or level of care for a while, as the place to kind of go reset, gather the tools, have those insightful experiences. And then really, like, I would almost say 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10 times, especially with adolescents, you're recommended for some sort of program after wilderness, because that is technically where you're supposed to pick up where you left off academically, which tends to be the biggest issue when we're talking about adolescents leaving school and entering a wilderness program, is how do I catch up? But outside of the academic piece, now it's supposed to be that therapeutic environment where all the tools that you've learned in wilderness are now put into play, like, right, the rubber meets the road. But
totally.
I'm going to tee this up because I feel like when you and I chatted, you shared some pretty insightful things about your experience and the dichotomy of the wilderness experience versus what came next. So tell us a little bit about your post-wilderness experience.
Yes. So you're 100% right. There's this joke in wilderness that other people who went will probably recognize, where whenever a plane flies overhead, which is always so weird to see, to know like there's people drinking Diet Coke, going to visit their parents, and like I'm here in the middle of nowhere. Every time I'm on a plane now, I think that I'm like, who am I flying over in the woods? But someone would say, how far away do you think the plane is? And you'd say like, oh, like 30,000 feet. And someone else says 10 to 12 weeks. Like, you're going to be here for 10 to 12 weeks. And then later on, you realize you're actually going to be away for maybe a year plus, because everybody in my group went somewhere after. And I went to a therapeutic boarding school that has since been closed. And it was actually in a castle. So that change in context from living with, a tarp shelter to literally going to school in a castle was just such a reflective visual of like the different environments. And the school that I went to had a very different philosophy. I would say Wilderness's philosophy was a lot more heart-centered. They approached people with kind of more curiosity about, okay, what has happened in your life? Like how do you feel about yourself and about others? And there was just a lot more humanity in it, I felt, than what I had experienced in clinical environments previously, where a lot of behavior was pathologized instead of seeing it as a coping skill or something that makes sense given a person's history or patterning. And then the boarding school that I went to afterwards was very much, build you down or break you down, to build you up type of environment. So they had extremely strict rules. For example, if you didn't have your privileges, like if your privileges were revoked, you weren't allowed to look at any photographs on the wall. You weren't allowed to hum. You weren't allowed to tap your fingers or fidget. The group therapy there, which has been called attack therapy, which is a completely appropriate title for it, involved, being in a group, and the group was focused on one person, and people would confront, but really verbally abuse and bully this person. And it would get really, really intense and dark. And a lot of the punishments there involved isolation and sleep deprivation and humiliating people. So I absolutely hated being there. And I could see from the beginning when I got there that something was off about it. Like I knew that it was just a really cruel and ineffective way to try and help people. But what's interesting too about like being in treatment is like, I think I didn't always trust my own instincts about things because I had been told for a lot of my life that I was wrong or that how I felt about things was wrong. And so there were people who were ostensibly professionals who were calling it therapy. So even though I felt it was really wrong, I had a hard time trusting my own gut feeling about it.
Well, and it just seems, I'm picturing the program from Netflix.
Yeah, totally.
Like just
Totally.
Very archaic, not therapeutic, that's traumatic. And especially on the heels of having had this therapeutic experience in an environment that you're saying like, look, I didn't like being outside. And especially in the beginning, I was like, this is awful. But then to have kind of the workaround where for the first time in all of your therapeutic or clinical interactions, like you finally felt like this is safe. And I'm learning about myself so I could do some like inward work. So to transition from that on this high to then that therapeutic boarding school just sounds like I can't even imagine.
Yeah, that's a really important point you raised about how there isn't really this through line. Like people go to multiple programs and they each have their own philosophy and their own approach and their own even just terminology. Like every place has their own slang for what things are called. So it is kind of disorienting to go and to feel that you've got a handle on a place and you've, been successful there, and then go to a place where you're starting at square one again. And maybe it's completely counter to what you've learned before. So that was definitely very difficult to be in an environment like that after I had been leaving with that kind of like wilderness high of like, I did this, I'm going to go out in the world. And then I was like, psych, I'm so not well here. Yeah.
Well, and fast forward to now. Yes. So I think that there is, I want to make sure that we're able to thread how, or like kind of marry your own personal experiences with how now you're showing up professionally and personally in the world. Okay, so let's talk about it. When you actually graduated from that therapeutic boarding school, give us the highlights leading to where you are now.
So I did not actually graduate. I ran away ran away because I did get to a point where I trusted enough how I felt about it and decided I will not spend my life here. There's no way. So I ran away. I luckily had an aunt who lived nearby who let me live with her for a bit because my parents did not believe I was ready to come home and weren't sure what to do with me, which I get. Like at that point, I had been in and out of treatment for years. I hadn't completed the program. And so my parents were totally baffled about like, what do we do with you? You can't come home and go back into your regular high school. You have to graduate high school. There's nowhere for you to go. So I can empathize with parents who are struggling. And like, luckily they have people like you to help them, you know, direct them towards resources, but just like how to help people get back on track when they've had this kind of like totally divergent experience. So I came back home eventually, and it is really tough coming back. Like there's a lot of grief and how much is lost. I felt a lot of grief and how much I'd lost by being away. And I think that like at times I felt too almost this resignation of like, okay, whatever, fine. I'll just be a bad kid the rest of my life because I'm not where I want to be. And I don't even know how I'm going to get there. And I may as well just give up because that kind of like limbo and purgatory is so uncomfortable. But I had to go to an alternative school to finish high school. And then I did classes at a community college, but then I actually got into a 4-year college, and then I went there, and then I decided I wanted to go to a UC because I'm from California. So then I went back to community college and then to a UC. So in college too, I bounced around a lot. And then I came out of college and I started working in tech. And then how I got into what I do now is I started sharing online about my experiences as a teen because I felt so misunderstood as a teen. And with the benefit of hindsight and age, there were aspects or features of that time I could articulate now that I couldn't have at that point. So I wanted to share that with people. And as well, I didn't really know any adults. I didn't know any adults who had been through that, who I could look to as examples of, okay, there actually is another side to this. I was the only person that I really knew outside of, I guess, the people I met in treatment who had that experience. So I wanted people to see that there is like life beyond these challenging years. And that kind of organically turned into me working as a mentor for struggling teens and helping support them through finding their way through these transitions, through like how difficult it just is to become a young adult in today's world.
Well, and okay, so first and foremost, I'm just going to say this. We'll plug this in the show notes, all contact information. But Ciara, how, just so people that are listening, like auditorily, how do people find you?
The best place to find me is my website, which is hominginstinct.org, or on Instagram, which is my name, Ciara Fanlo.
Perfect. Again, we'll have those links in the show notes. So speaking of the work that you're doing, right, and how it just kind of like organically came to be, I like asking this question because I feel like it just gives, obviously I like it so much. I just went like super high pitched in my voice. That's how much I like it. If, you know, like adolescent Ciara was now seeing where you are now and what it is that you're doing, what do you think her reaction would be?
Oh my gosh. This is such a timely question because I actually just had this really interesting experience. It was recently the 10-year anniversary of when I got sent to Wilderness, and I was on a backpacking trip with some of my friends in Southern Colorado, which is where I went to Wilderness therapy. And I was leaving the trip before them and going back alone. And I actually got lost, which has never happened to me. And I managed to find my way back by listening really, really carefully, like almost playing Marco Polo with the river, because I knew that if I found the river again, that was the through line that would take me back to where my friends were and where the trail was. And when I came out of that experience, I felt like I had reconnected with my inner teenager. I was feeling these things that I could recognize as as distinctly like adolescent Ciara despair, adolescent Ciara angst. And I just felt so overwhelmed by how intense they were. I was like, oh my God, like I knew that it was tough to be a teenager. I forget how tough it is to be a teenager because you don't have a lot of reference points when you're young for how different your life can be or for how much things can change. Like when I was 15, I had really only known feeling super insecure and lonely and depressed. So I think if adolescent me could see what I'm doing now, she would be so grateful for what she's going through because she would understand it as ingredients of her development and like know that, okay, this is part of like my spiritual journey. This is part of my growth. I'm going through training right now. And hopefully she would be able to see, yeah, this is like a reference point of like what's possible for her. Cause I just didn't really believe that like much else was possible for me at that age.
Wow. I love that. Very timely, to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so last question, and I think that this is more geared towards, the majority of the audience that listens to this podcast is parents of really the like older teens into emerging adults, whether or not they're actually in treatment. But we just know so many young people nowadays are struggling with anxiety, whether or not it escalates to the point of like needing more than outpatient therapy. Regardless, parents are seeking support for how do I accept what is happening and like support my child? So with that said, final question, if you could give kind of any imparting advice to a parent that might be, what you wish your parents had heard way back when you were, pre-wilderness, is there anything that you would want parents to know right now?
I think the most important thing is to have faith that your child will be okay. You have to hold the bigger picture of who they are and see them beyond just what's happening right now. Because your child can sense how you feel about them. So if you see them as dysfunctional and their future is doomed, like they on some level will intuit that you feel that way about them. And I felt so motivated and encouraged and seen when there were people in my life who could be with the pain I was feeling, but like also see me beyond it and like hold the bigger picture of who I was. And one thing I would also say is like, you believe everything they tell you and you believe nothing. Like so much of it is like just believing how much pain they're really in and how tough it is and taking that seriously, but also not believing them when they say, I'm never going to make it. I'm a bad kid. I'm not going to be okay. And I think that the final thing I would say is sometimes when people are in these places, they don't always ask for what they need. Like I would sometimes push away the help or push away the invitations to spend time with the family. And so I can see parents maybe feeling like rejected or defied and just being like, okay, I'm like backing off. So you don't always have to like be in their face, but keeping the door open, like always keeping the door open for them to come to you as well. But really, I think like finding the faith that your child will be okay and holding that bigger picture no matter what throughout all of the moments. Cause like there's are going to be challenges again, like things are going to come back up. They just inevitably will. And like not seeing that as evidence that like nothing has happened and that you're right back to square one. You're always coming from a different place. Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that. And Ciara, thanks again for being a guest on the Success is Subjective podcast.
Thank you so much, Joanna.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guest for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email Joanna at lilyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.
Do you have a teenager or young adult who seems to have lost their way? Maybe they need help navigating adolescence, adulthood, and decisions surrounding higher education. Or maybe they have become withdrawn, their grades are slipping, or they are flat out living a reckless lifestyle, and you're concerned about their health and well-being. If this describes what your teen or young adult is facing, a therapeutic consultant may be able to help. Mental health, addiction recovery, and higher education can all be equally expensive. While information is everywhere, how do you know what option is the best one for your family? Some parents have the time to research and navigate this on their own. Some don't. If the latter applies to you, enter therapeutic consultants. Therapeutic consultants, like Joanna, listen to your family's specific needs and advocate on behalf of your loved one. TCs will research therapeutic resources, recommend treatment programs, and assist during adulthood transitions. Not being affiliated with any program, their support is completely objective and catered toward the best interest of each unique family. To find a qualified therapeutic consultant to work with, check out TCA, also known as the Therapeutic Consulting Association. Their website is therapeuticconsulting.org, all one word. Again, that's therapeuticconsulting.org. Then click the Find a Pro tab up at the top.